The massive crystal hall buzzed with alien voices as creatures from across the galaxy gathered for the most important meeting in centuries. Lisa Murphy walked slowly toward the center platform where a single chair waited for her. Her brown hair was tied back neatly and her blue uniform bore the Earth symbol on the shoulder. She looked very small compared to the huge aliens that filled the seats around her. The hall was bigger than any stadium on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that glowed with soft purple light. Floating platforms held delegates from 47 different worlds. Some looked like giant insects with many arms. Others were made of pure energy that shifted and moved like colored smoke. A few looked almost human, but with scales or fur or extra eyes. Lisa sat down in the defendant chair and looked up at the towering figure of High Chancellor Vorthak. The Zephyrian leader was 12 feet tall and made entirely of blue crystal. When he moved his 6 arms, the light inside his body pulsed brighter. His voice came through speakers placed around the hall because his real voice would shatter glass. "The emergency session of the Galactic Council will now begin," Vorthak announced. His words echoed off the crystal walls. "We are here today to decide the fate of the species known as humans." Lisa felt her heart beating faster. She had known this day might come, but she had hoped they would have more time. Captain Jake Sullivan sat in the gallery behind her. He was her military advisor and one of the few humans allowed in the council chambers. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his hands were clenched into fists. "The human species stands accused of 3 major crimes against galactic peace," Vorthak continued. "First, they have expanded across space faster than any species in recorded history. Second, they have damaged the environments of 17 worlds. Third, and most serious, they have taught other peaceful species how to make war." A hologram appeared above Lisa showing a map of human space. Red dots marked every human colony, and they spread out like a disease across several star systems. The image zoomed in to show strip-mined asteroids and planets with huge cities carved into their surfaces. Then it showed something worse. Alien species that had never known war now carried human-designed weapons and built human-style military bases. The Etherean delegate Lumara floated closer to the center of the hall. She was made of golden light that pulsed with anger. "In just 50 years since first contact, these humans have corrupted our peaceful galaxy. The Korvan Collective used to solve all problems through discussion. Now they have armies. The Gentle Mollusk Federation spent 1,000 years without violence. Now they build warships. This disease spreads everywhere humans go." Lisa wanted to speak, but she knew she had to wait. The rules of the council were clear. All accusations had to be presented before any defense could begin. She watched as more evidence appeared in the air around her. Videos of human soldiers training alien troops. Pictures of weapon factories on worlds that had never seen conflict. Maps showing how military thinking had spread from species to species. Like a virus. Ambassador Kilter of the reptilian hegemony slammed his massive tail against the floor. The sound boomed through the hall like thunder. "Look at what they have done," he hissed. His yellow eyes glowed with fury. "Peaceful races now speak of tactics and strategy. Children who should learn art and music instead learn to fight. The humans have poisoned the minds of our galaxy." More holographic evidence filled the air. Lisa saw images she recognized and others that shocked her. Yes, humans had helped build defenses for some species, but the council was showing only part of the story. They showed the weapons, but not the enemies those weapons had stopped. They showed the military bases, but not the attacks those bases had prevented. The aquatic delegate Mirthula rose from her water-filled platform. Her blue-green skin glistened under the crystal light. "For 3,000 years our galaxy has known peace. Yes, there were small conflicts, but nothing like the systematic warfare these humans practice. They do not just fight their enemies. They study fighting like a science. They create new ways to kill, and they teach these methods to anyone who will listen." Ben Carter sat next to Captain Sullivan, taking notes as fast as he could. The young diplomat had worked with Lisa for 2 years, and he had never seen the council so unified against any species. Usually the different alien races argued among themselves, but today they all seemed to agree that humanity was a threat. Dr. Amy Rodriguez watched from the highest gallery where the observers sat. She was the team psychologist, and she studied the body language and energy patterns of the different species. What she saw worried her. This was not a fair trial where evidence would be weighed carefully. This felt like a predetermined execution where the verdict had already been decided. "The evidence is overwhelming," declared Speaker Zafara of the Botanical Collective. Her tree-like form swayed as she spoke, and her leaves rustled with emotion. "Wherever humans establish colonies, violence follows. Wherever they make contact with peaceful species, those species become militarized. They are like a cancer that spreads aggression throughout healthy tissue." Lisa finally understood what was happening. The Council was not just afraid of human military power, they were afraid of human ideas. For thousands of years, these species had maintained peace by avoiding conflict entirely. When problems arose, they either ignored them until they went away, or they simply destroyed the source completely. The idea that conflict could be managed, controlled, and even used to protect the innocent was completely alien to them. The silicate representative Shaitar spoke next. His rock-like body scraped against his platform as he moved. "I have studied human history through their own records. In their short existence, they have fought over 10,000 wars. They have created weapons that could destroy entire planets. They celebrate their warriors and teach their children to admire soldiers. This is not a species that can coexist with peaceful civilizations." Vorthak raised all 6 arms for silence. The hall fell quiet except for the soft humming of the crystal walls. "The accusations have been presented. The evidence has been shown. In 7 galactic standard days, this council will vote on the following question. Should the human species be eliminated as a threat to galactic peace?" Lisa felt the words hit her like a physical blow. Eliminated, not restricted, or monitored, or quarantined. Eliminated, they were talking about genocide. The complete destruction of every human being in the galaxy. "The defendant will have 3 days to prepare a response," Vorthok continued. "The vote will be final and binding. This session is adjourned." As the alien delegates began to float away from their platforms, Lisa remained sitting in her chair. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on her like a mountain. 47 alien species were going to decide whether humanity lived or died, and from what she had heard today, most of them had already made up their minds. Captain Sullivan appeared at her side. His face was grim, but his voice was steady. "We need to talk." Lisa Murphy sat in the human quarters staring at the holographic displays that covered every wall. The room hummed with activity as her team worked around the clock to prepare their defense. She had divided her people into 3 groups, and each one was searching for answers that might save their entire species. Ben Carter led the research team in the far corner of the room. The young diplomat had dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep, but he kept reading through thousands of documents. His team was trying to understand exactly why the alien species saw humans as such a terrible threat. They needed to know how these aliens thought before they could figure out how to change their minds. Captain Jake Sullivan worked with the military records team near the communications console. His weathered hands moved quickly across the holographic controls as he pulled up files from every human military operation in alien space. Each battle report and tactical analysis might contain something that could help their case. His team was looking for proof that humans had acted in defense rather than aggression. Dr. Amy Rodriguez sat surrounded by alien psychological profiles and brain scans. Her job was to figure out how the different council species made decisions and what might convince them to vote for humanity. She studied the biology and culture of each race, trying to find weaknesses in their logic or emotions they could appeal to. "We need to understand why they hate us so much," Lisa told her assembled team. Every species in that chamber seemed ready to vote for our elimination before we even spoke. That level of fear and anger does not come from nowhere. Ben looked up from his research tablet. His findings painted a disturbing picture of galactic society. According to the historical records, the last major war in this galaxy ended over 3,000 years ago. Most of these species evolved from prey animals, or they developed on worlds where cooperation was the only way to survive. They literally cannot understand why intelligent beings would ever fight each other. Dr. Rodriguez nodded as she highlighted sections of her analysis. The brain scans confirm what Ben found. Species like the Zephyrians and Etherians have neural structures that make them physically unable to comprehend aggression as anything other than a mental disease. When they look at human behavior, they see symptoms of insanity spreading like a plague. Captain Sullivan pulled up tactical displays on the main screen. Recent conflicts flashed before them, showing human forces engaged in battles across several star systems. But here is what they are not seeing. Every single time we taught military tactics to an alien species, it was because they were already under attack. Yes, we showed the Corvins how to fight, but only because the Void Hunters were systematically destroying their colonies. Lisa studied the data as a pattern began to emerge in her mind. They are seeing the effect but completely ignoring the cause. We did not create these conflicts, we responded to them. The problem is proving that, Ben said as he scrolled through more documents. The Council historical records do not seem to acknowledge conflicts that end quickly. When a predator species attacks other races, they either win completely and wipe out their enemies, or they disappear without a trace. There are no records of extended wars because the Council does not want to remember them. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted something important on her screen. I found something interesting buried in the diplomatic archives. 3 different Council species have formal thank you declarations addressed to humanity. The Corvan Collective sent one after we helped them fight off the Void Hunters. The Mollusk Federation thanked us for helping them resist enslavement. Even the Silicate Mining Consortium has a gratitude document on file. That is our angle, Lisa realized as the pieces clicked together in her mind. We do not defend ourselves by explaining our violent nature. We defend ourselves by showing the results of our actions. We saved these species. The team spent the next 4 days reaching out to every alien race that humanity had helped in some way. What they discovered shocked them. Many of these species had been deliberately left out of the official Council records. The galactic government seemed to maintain peace by pretending that threats simply did not exist. When something dangerous appeared, they either ignored it until someone else dealt with it, or they destroyed it completely and erased all evidence. Ben compiled a list of species that had thanked humanity privately but never spoke about it publicly. It looks like the Council has an unofficial policy of selective memory. They only record events that support their narrative of galactic peace. Anything that contradicts that story gets buried. Captain Sullivan accessed military communications from the past 5 years. I am finding distress calls that were never answered by the Council. The Mollusk Federation sent emergency requests for help when the Silicon Collective was enslaving their people. They broadcast for 6 months straight. The Council response was always the same. Such conflicts will resolve themselves through natural processes. Natural processes? Dr. Rodriguez repeated with disgust. They meant extinction. The natural process was letting an entire species die rather than admit that violence sometimes happens. Lisa felt a cold anger building in her chest. So they maintain their perfect peaceful society by letting other races handle the dirty work of actually protecting people. Then they condemn us for doing what they were too cowardly to do themselves. As they dug deeper into the records, more disturbing patterns emerged. The Council had a long history of ignoring genuine threats until someone else eliminated them. Pirates who raided peaceful colonies were treated as natural disasters. Slave traders were considered a business dispute. Even the Void Hunters had been classified as an unexplained phenomenon rather than a hostile force. Ben discovered that 3 Council species had been completely wiped out in the past century, but their destruction was recorded as voluntary emigration to unknown regions of space. They literally rewrite history to avoid acknowledging that bad things happen. He said with amazement. A soft chime indicated an incoming message to their communication system. Lisa accepted the transmission and was surprised to see the image of Ambassador Cathara from the neutral archivist. The spider like being rarely communicated with anyone outside their own species? Ambassador Murphy, the alien said through the translator, I have been observing the proceedings with great interest. Your species presents a fascinating case study in historical revision. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Cathara shifted position, and her compound eyes seemed to focus directly on the camera. The Council maintains peace through selective amnesia. They have forgotten more conflicts than most species ever experience. If humanity seeks the truth about galactic history, the archivists remember what others choose to ignore. Are you offering to help us? Lisa could hardly believe what she was hearing. I am offering to show you the complete historical record, Cathara replied. What the Council has chosen to forget may be exactly what humanity needs to remember. Meet me in archive. Section 7 in 1 hour. Come alone. Lisa felt hope stirring for the first time since the trial began. Maybe they had been looking at this all wrong. Instead of defending human actions, maybe they needed to expose the lies that the Council had built their peaceful society on. If the truth was as bad as she suspected, the real question would not be whether humanity deserved to survive, but whether the Council deserved to judge them. Lisa Murphy walked through the empty corridors of Archive Section 7, feeling like she was entering a forbidden tomb. The walls here were different from the rest of the Council station. Instead of living crystal, they were made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the edges where the walls met the ceiling. Ben Carter walked beside her, even though Ambassador Cathara had asked her to come alone. Lisa had decided that whatever they were about to learn was too important to face by herself. The archive chamber was vast beyond imagination. Towering data crystals stretched up into darkness above them, while holographic displays flickered with information from across the galaxy. The air hummed with the sound of millions of processors working constantly to maintain the greatest library in known space. Ambassador Cathara waited for them near a control console that looked like it had not been used in centuries. Your species fascinates the archivists, Cathara said without any greeting. Her 8 legs moved in a complex pattern as she activated the ancient controls. Her compound eyes reflected the light from the displays in thousands of tiny rainbows. You are the first species in over a millennium to ask about the deleted records. Deleted records? Ben asked as he pulled out his data tablet to take notes. Cathara made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. The Council maintains peace through selective forgetting. When a threat is completely eliminated, all records of its existence are moved here to the deep memory. Only archivists can access this information. The galaxy forgets what happened, and peace continues as if the danger never existed. The spider being led them deeper into the archive past layers of standard historical data that any Council member could access. The deeper they went, the older and more disturbing the information became. The void hunters that your species fought were not the first existential threat to galactic civilization. In the past 1,000 years alone, 17 different species have posed extinction-level dangers to every living being in Council space. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of threats? The plague builders who could turn entire worlds into viral weapons that would kill any organic life that touched the surface. The reality shapers who discovered how to alter the fundamental laws of physics within entire solar systems. The quantum parasites who fed on consciousness itself and could drain the minds of billions of beings across interstellar distances. Cathara activated a massive holographic display that filled the entire chamber. Images of cosmic horror appeared around them, showing the true history of their galaxy. Worlds turned into disease factories. Stars that burned with impossible colors because their nuclear processes had been rewritten. Entire species reduced to empty shells. Wandering through space with their minds completely gone, Ben frantically tried to record everything he was seeing. What happened to all these threats? They were eliminated, Cathara stated with no emotion in her translator voice. Completely and totally destroyed? Every ship, every world, every individual of these species was hunted down and killed. No trace of them remains in normal space. The Council species who participated in these extermination campaigns had their memories selectively modified afterwards so they would not remember the violence they had committed. Lisa stared at the evidence surrounding them. The peaceful galactic civilization that had put humanity on trial was built on a foundation of systematic genocide. But that means every time there was a real threat, the Council solved it through complete extinction. Precisely, Cathara agreed as she brought up more data. Your species has accomplished something in 50 years that typically requires total annihilation campaigns. You neutralized 3 major threats and somehow managed to reintegrate the aggressor species back into galactic society. The Void Hunters, who attacked the Corvins, are now working as asteroid miners in the Outer Rim. The Silicon Collective that enslaved the mollusks has signed trade agreements and pays reparations. The corporate raiders who attacked the mining worlds have been reformed into legitimate businesses. Ben looked up from his tablet with amazement. We stopped the threats without committing genocide. More than that, Cathara continued as new. Information flowed across the displays. You prevented the memory modification that usually follows such conflicts. The species you help remember what happened to them and they remember who saved them. This creates a permanent record that cannot be deleted or forgotten. The archivist showed them tactical analyses of human military operations. Every battle had been carefully studied and compared to historical Council campaigns. When the Council faces an existential threat, they respond with overwhelming force designed to leave no survivors. Your species uses precisely the minimum force necessary to neutralize the danger while preserving as much life as possible. You fight to protect rather than to destroy. Lisa studied the data trying to understand the full implications. The Council is afraid of us because we represent a different way of handling conflicts. Instead of their choose between ignoring problems or committing genocide, we show that there is a third option. The Council system has worked for 3,000 years, Cathara explained. But it only works because they can erase the evidence of their methods afterward. Your species threatens this system because you solve problems without creating the need for memory modification. You leave witnesses and survivors who remember what really happened. Ben had been quiet for several minutes as he processed the information. Can we present this evidence at the trial? Cathara's compound eyes dimmed slightly. Archivist testimony is not admissible in Council proceedings. We are observers, not participants. Our records contradict the official historical framework that the Council has built their entire civilization upon. If this information were to become public knowledge, it would destroy the foundation of galactic society. Then why are you showing it to us? Lisa asked. Because your species represents something that the archivists have never observed before. You have found a way to preserve peace without destroying truth. Every other species that faced the choice between comfortable lies and difficult reality chose the lies. You chose reality even when it meant accepting the burden of being seen as violent and aggressive. The spider being activated one final display showing current galactic communications. At this moment there are 17 different distress calls being broadcast from various sectors of the galaxy. Pirates are attacking trade routes, slavers are raiding colonies. Corporate raiders are strip mining inhabited worlds. The Council classifies all of these as natural phenomena that will resolve themselves. In Council language, that means they expect someone else to handle the problems or they expect the victims to die quietly. Lisa felt anger building in her chest as she watched the evidence of suffering that the Council was simply ignoring. How many species are dying right now while the Council pretends nothing is wrong? The current estimate is 43 million. Sentient beings under direct threat with approximately 2 million deaths per galactic standard day. Cathara replied without emotion. Ben stopped taking notes and stared at the numbers. 2 million deaths every day and they do nothing? They maintain the fiction of galactic peace, Cathara corrected. As long as the threats are not officially acknowledged, they do not exist in Council reality. Your species threatens this system because You acknowledge threats and you do something about them. This makes you more dangerous to their worldview than any actual enemy could ever be. Lisa realized that the trial was not really about whether humanity was dangerous. It was about whether the galaxy could continue to live in comfortable denial, or whether they would have to face the reality that evil existed and sometimes required violence to stop it. Humanity was being judged not for their actions but for their refusal to pretend that those actions were unnecessary. The fourth day of the trial brought something that had not happened in the Galactic Council for over 2 centuries. As Lisa Murphy prepared to present humanity's defense, Ambassador Zekthar of the Corvan Collective rose from his observer platform and requested permission to address the council. The massive bear-like creature had never spoken in these chambers before, and his deep voice carried a weight that made even the crystal walls seem to vibrate. "Hi." Chancellor Vorthok's blue form pulsed with surprise and irritation. "Ambassador. Zekthar, the Council does not recognize testimony from non-voting observer species. This proceeding concerns established threats to galactic stability." "Honored Council," Zekthar replied as his thick fur bristled with emotion. "I speak not as an observer but as one whose people exist today only because humans taught us that survival is not a crime." The Corvan activated his own holographic projector without waiting for permission. Images filled the chamber that made. Several council members recoil in horror. Sleek black ships with no markings descended on peaceful Corvan colonies. Entire cities burned while families fled into the forests. Bodies floated in the vacuum of space around orbital stations that had been cracked open like eggs. "The humans did not bring war to my people," Zekthar declared as the images continued to play. "War had already come like a plague in the night. The humans brought us something far more precious than peace. They brought us the knowledge that we could defend our children." Captain Jake Sullivan watched from the gallery as the council chamber fell silent. He remembered that first distress call from the Corvan worlds. The human fleet had arrived to find entire colonies being systematically exterminated by raiders who seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. The holographic display showed Corvan civilians learning to use weapons for the first time in their species' history. Children who had never seen violence were taught to hide in bunkers while their parents learned military tactics from human instructors. The images were heartbreaking, but they told a story of survival rather than aggression. "For 6 months we sent distress calls to this council," Zekthar continued. "We begged for help as our people died. The response was always the same. Such conflicts will resolve themselves through natural processes. You told us to have patience, while our children were murdered." Ambassador Silandra of the Mollusk Federation rose next from her liquid-filled platform. Her translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that showed deep anger. "My people have lived in peace for over 1,000 years. We had no concept of warfare until the Silicon Collective arrived and began harvesting our people like crops." The mollusk projected her own evidence into the chamber. "Peaceful underwater cities being attacked by mechanical beings who treated living creatures as raw materials. Mollusk civilians being processed through machines that extracted their neural fluid while keeping their bodies alive for continued harvesting. The natural process that the council spoke of was our complete extinction," Silandra said as her light patterns shifted to show grief. "The humans taught us that sometimes peace must be defended with strength or it becomes nothing more than an invitation for predators." Dr. Amy Rodriguez monitored the biometric readings of council members from her position in the gallery. The fear and discomfort that had dominated the earlier sessions was changing into something else. Some species were showing signs of shame, while others displayed confusion as their fundamental beliefs about galactic peace were challenged. Ambassador Turquin of the Deep Ocean World spoke next. His aquatic species rarely left their water-filled environments, making his presence even more significant. "The Council asks whether humanity should be eliminated, but the question you should be asking is this: what happens the next time a threat emerges that requires more than wishful thinking to stop?" One by one, species that had been helped by humanity began to tell their stories. The Silicate Mining Consortium showed images of their crystalline people being used as living tools by corporate raiders. The Botanical Collective projected scenes of their forest cities being clear-cut by machines that treated sentient trees as lumber. The Avian Messenger Corps displayed evidence of their people being captured and forced to carry information for criminal organizations. Each testimony revealed the same pattern. Peaceful species under attack while the Council ignored their pleas for help. Human intervention that stopped the violence with minimal casualties. Aggressors who were defeated but not destroyed and somehow convinced to abandon their hostile behavior. Ben Carter took notes frantically as witness after witness challenged the Council's version of events. These were not stories of human conquest or aggression. They were stories of human protection and the careful application of force to preserve life rather than destroy it. The reptilian delegate Kilthur, who had initially called for humanity's elimination, sat in thoughtful silence. His species had evolved from apex predators, and unlike most council members, they understood the relationship between strength and survival. "I have listened to the testimony presented today," he finally said. "My people know the difference between a predator and a protector. What I hear described is not the behavior of a conqueror, but the actions of a guardian." The statement sent ripples of shock through the assembly. The reptilian hegemony was one of the most influential voices in the council, and their support could change everything. Ambassador Lumara of the Etherians pulsed with conflicted energy patterns. "But if we accept this philosophy, if we acknowledge that sometimes violence is necessary to preserve peace, what does this mean for our civilization? How do we maintain our moral authority if we admit that we have been wrong about the nature of conflict?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Lisa realized that this was the moment she had been preparing for. The Council was not just deciding humanity's fate. They were deciding whether to continue living in comfortable denial or face the reality that their peaceful galaxy was built on others doing the violent work they refused to acknowledge. "Captain," Sullivan stood in the gallery even though it violated protocol. "It means you finally have allies when the next threat comes. And there will always be a next threat, because evil does not stop existing just because good people refuse to see it." High Chancellor Vorthak's crystal form dimmed as he processed what he had heard. "The testimony has raised questions that go beyond the scope of this trial. We will adjourn for deliberation before the final vote." As the session ended, Lisa found herself surrounded by delegates from species she had never met before. Predator races that had always felt like outsiders in the pacifist-dominated council. Survivor species that had endured attacks while the council looked away. Former victims who had been quietly grateful for human intervention but afraid to speak publicly. "This is just the beginning," Ambassador Kilthur told her privately. "The galaxy is about to discover that strength and peace are not enemies. They are partners in the same cause." Lisa felt hope growing in her chest for the first time since the trial began. Maybe humanity would not just survive this vote. Maybe they would help the galaxy grow into something better than it had been before. Lisa Murphy stood at the defendant platform for the final time, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether humanity lived or died. The crystal chamber buzzed with tension as 47 alien species prepared to cast their votes. She could feel the weight of billions of human lives resting on her shoulders as she prepared to make the most important speech in her species' history. "Honored delegates of the Galactic Council," she began with her voice carrying clearly across the vast hall. "You have accused my people of bringing violence to your peaceful galaxy, but I ask you to consider this. What is more violent? Teaching someone to defend their children or watching silently while those children are murdered?" High Chancellor Vorthak's crystal form pulsed with uncertainty. The testimony from the previous day had shaken the foundation of everything the Council believed about galactic peace. For the first time in his long life, he was questioning whether their methods had truly been moral. "You fear us because we fight," Lisa continued as she gestured toward the assembled allies who had spoken for humanity. "But you misunderstand what that means. We do not fight because we enjoy destroying life. We fight because sometimes it is the only way to protect what we love. Ambassador Kilthur of the reptilian hegemony slowly rose to his feet. His decision would influence many other council members, and Lisa held her breath waiting for his words. I have spent many days considering the evidence presented to this body. My species evolved as hunters, and we understand the balance between predator and prey, between strength and mercy. What I have heard described is not the behavior of a threat to galactic peace. It is the behavior of its greatest protector. The statement sent waves of shock through the chamber. The reptilian hegemony had been among humanity's strongest opponents. At the beginning of the trial, their support could change everything. But the evidence of military expansion, protested Ambassador Murthala of the Aquatic Collective. The weapons factories and training facilities that humans have built across dozens of worlds. How do we explain this rapid militarization of peaceful space? Captain Jake Sullivan had remained silent throughout most of the trial, but now he stood in the gallery where observers sat. Every weapon we built was in response to an existing threat. Every training facility was established to help species defend themselves against attackers who were already killing them. We did not create these conflicts, we ended them. Dr. Amy Rodriguez watched the biometric readings of council members as the debate continued. Fear was giving way to something she had not expected to see: relief. Many of these species had spent centuries worrying about threats they could not fight, while pretending those threats did not exist. Ambassador Lumara of the Etherians pulsed with conflicted energy patterns. If we accept this philosophy, then we must acknowledge that our peaceful civilization has been built on a foundation of willful ignorance. We have maintained our moral purity by allowing others to handle the violence we were too afraid to face. Yes, Lisa said simply. That is exactly what you have done. And that is why you hate us. We force you to see the truth about your galaxy. Evil exists whether you acknowledge it or not. The only question is whether you will fight it or pretend it does not exist while others die. Ben Carter watched from the gallery as more council members began to speak. The debate was no longer about whether humans were dangerous. It had become a philosophical discussion about the nature of peace itself and whether it could exist without the willingness to defend it. Ambassador Cathara of the Neutral Archivist spoke for the first time during the trial. The Council faces a choice that will define the future of galactic civilization. You can continue the cycle of ignorance and selective memory that has defined your past. Or you can embrace a new model where strength serves peace instead of destroying it. The spider being activated a holographic display showing current distress calls from across the galaxy. At this moment, 17 species are under attack by various hostile forces. Pirates, slavers, and corporate raiders continue their work while this council debates whether those who fight evil should be eliminated. Perhaps the real question is not whether humanity should survive, but whether the council system itself deserves to continue. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed the implications of what they had heard. For 3,000 years they had maintained peace through a combination of selective memory and strategic ignorance. Now they were being forced to confront the reality that their peaceful galaxy existed only because someone else was willing to do the violent work of protecting it. Hi. Chancellor Vorthak raised his 6 arms to call for order. The debate period has ended. We will now proceed to the vote. The question before the Council is whether humanity should be eliminated as a threat to galactic peace. Each delegate will cast their vote publicly and their decision will be recorded in the permanent archives. Lisa felt her heart pounding as the voting began. Species after species announced their decision while the great display showed the running total. The Zephyrian hegemony voted for elimination. The Crystalline Federation voted for elimination. The Energy Collective voted for elimination, but then came surprises. The Reptilian hegemony voted for humanity's survival. The Deep Ocean Worlds voted for survival. Several predator species that had remained silent throughout the trial voted to support humanity. The observer species who had been helped by humans were not allowed to vote, but their testimony had influenced others. The avian supremacy voted for survival after hearing about human protection of messenger birds. The Mineral Rights Consortium voted for survival after learning about corporate raiders being stopped. As the votes continued, Lisa realized the outcome would be closer than anyone had expected. Fear and tradition pushed toward elimination, but pragmatism and newly awakened conscience supported survival. When the final vote was tallied, the results sent shockwaves through the galaxy. 17 species voted for humanity's elimination. 22 species voted for full recognition and integration into galactic society. 8 species abstained, unable to reconcile their pacifist nature with the reality of galactic threats. By majority vote, Vorthek announced with his voice carrying notes of both resignation and hope, humanity is granted full council membership and formal recognition as a galactic defense partner. The species known as humans will be authorized to respond to threats against council member species with full legal protection. Lisa felt tears streaming down her face as the chamber erupted in discussion. They had not just survived the vote. They had been officially recognized as protectors of galactic peace. 3 months later, when long-range sensors detected a massive void hunter fleet returning with reinforcements, they found something completely different from the helpless prey they expected. A coordinated galactic defense force waited for them. Ships from dozens of species working together under human tactical coordination. Weapons designed by races who finally understood that sometimes peace must be fought for. The Void Hunters retreated. Without firing a shot when they realized their easy targets had become dangerous enemies. In the deep, Archives Ambassador Cathara updated the permanent records with a note that would never be deleted. The day the galaxy chose courage over comfort. The day they learned that true peace comes not from avoiding conflict, but from having the strength to end it quickly and the wisdom to build something better afterward.